I came to the United States in 2002. I'm originally from Germany. My background is geology, and I'm still having a bit of fun playing around with rocks here in the district. We get to that a little bit later. I learned how to operate a water system from the ground up, and since 2007, I'm in the function of general manager here at Montara Water and Sanitary District. So going into our first slide, our district was formed in 1958, and we're not the only district that was formed around the same time. In the 50s, the state saw really the need to implement treatment plants to get homes of septic systems and on proper sewage treatment, particularly along the California coast side. Sections of Montara were served by a primary community treatment plant that was located close to Montara Beach. And when I say primary treatment, that means it's a very simple holding tank that keeps solids out. They were removed, the liquids that were sent directly into the ocean onto Montara Beach. The state's mandate for better treatment was supposed to be implemented by what we now consider the larger agencies. In our case, it would have been San Mateo County. The local citizens did not agree with the suggestion of the county and felt they could implement a much more cost-effective and better tailored implementation specifically for our local situation. It took about 6 years to implement the construction of a collection system. What that really is, we will explain in this presentation. A secondary sewage treatment plant was also built in the mid-60s, and that was located on what is today our district office property. A secondary sewage treatment plant that was at the time the state-of-the-art treatment plant, and it is still the technology that is used today for sewer treatment plants. Our centralized sewer treatment plant that is today located in Half Moon Bay, that is the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside treatment plant, is also an example. It is a secondary treatment plant. Going forward, for Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside, we call it SAM. So anytime you hear SAM, we're not talking about a person, we're talking about the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside, which is the Joint Powers Authority we're part owner of. With the sewer powers comes also the jurisdiction about solid waste disposal. We govern garbage collection through a franchise agreement with Recology of the Coast. Shortly after the formation of the district, San Mateo County was in need for a garbage dump, and that was planned at the time for what we know as Gray Whale Cove. So we can thank the folks that were active in our district at the time that this nightmare solution was not implemented. One can just imagine how different our coast would look like today. In 2003, we had a local citizens group, the Montara Moss Beach Water Improvement Association, that was instrumental in the transition from a privately owned, poorly managed local water system to what is now Montara Water and Sanitary District. Many of you have been here at the time and know that we could spend an entire evening talking about this alone. At the time, tanks ran dry on hot fall days like we have today. The water quality was poor. Our predecessor companies received permission from the state regulators to increase the water rates on a regular basis. That was done to resolve the situation, but instead of putting the money in the ground, their investors were supported. The next slide, Allison. Thank you. So, who are we? You may know that some of your board members. They really invest a lot of their time to ensure that your water and sewer services are provided in accordance with our district statement. You may have seen that up briefly as one of our first slides. Fiscal responsibility is very important for us as well as a sewer agent, for a sewer agency, particularly, of course, the protection of the environment is also on top of our minds. We have a small admin staff. You may know Tracy or Sonia personally or from phone conversations. Our field staff is, of course, most visible. They're out in the community every day. And we thank them for being there day and night to ensure the water keeps flowing. For example, right now, they're dealing with a plant power shutoff in the backside of Montara. I hope this is not going to turn out to be true and nobody will drop off. What's unique about our staff is also that most of them live in the district, all live on the coast side, and really know the area and identify with our district. Also an integral part of our operations are our water and sewer engineers, SRT Consulting on the water side and Newt Engineering on the sewer side. Both are small firms that specialize in providing cost-effective solutions specifically for small agencies like ours, and both are involved in the permitting process as well. Next slide, Allison. So how does every day in Montara Water Sanitary District look like? What is staff really doing? We already mentioned there's an operations side. We take water samples. We ensure that your water quality is up to date. For some parameters, this is done on a daily basis. Others, we look at weekly, monthly, or quarterly sampling intervals. Our treatment plants, we have 4 of them, need to be operated. Our wells and tanks need to be maintained and checked every single day. This is not a system that can be left unsupervised. In addition, we install new service lines, fix leaks, help with infrastructure projects. On the admin side, a big portion of what we do is related to billing, permitting, accounting, and anything else really that any other business has to deal with as well. Next slide. So let's take a look at our budget, really here, the income side. Where does the money come from that we need to operate the system? And you see we have some smaller slivers here. There's a portion that comes from new connections. We invest our reserves, and depending on market conditions, we see some benefit from that. Compared to other agencies, we receive a relatively minor amount of property tax income, makes out a bit more than 10%. So the vast majority of what we have to pay for really comes from your bill payments, regardless if this is on the water side or the sewer side. Next slide. So now let's go in the other direction. The expense side, where does the money go? We already talked about our maintenance and operations needs, and that makes up about half of our expenditures really. We have to pay our staff, maintain equipment like trucks, pumps. We have to pay our engineers, accountant, other professional services that are outsourced. Another big chunk of our expenses goes to capital investments, the ongoing replacement costs of the system. We're going to talk about this in the later slides in more detail. A lot of our facilities are underground and not visible. Tonight's purpose is to show you some of what you can see. So all of our pumps, pipes, other equipment needs to be upgraded and replaced at one point, and that requires significant investments. It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You start on one side. Once you're done and paint it all the way to the other side, you can immediately go back and start over again. We've gone through some recent rate increases to better address this need, and hopefully this presentation will help you understand why we needed to do this. A third category of major expenses are loans and bonds that have helped us in the past. So repairs and upgrades that were made in the past still need to be paid off. This is similar to a mortgage payment. We live in a house and that still needs to be paid off, at least portions of it. Next slide, please. So here we show a bit more of what our money pays for on the operations side. We repair our tanks, we make sure they're in order. We mentioned water quality testing. Our admin side does need to be paid for. We have capital improvement projects every year and also respond, of course, to emergencies. Here are some pictures. Allison, maybe you can point to the picture in, yeah, exactly. From a recent leak. That's a recent leak in the Seal Cove area that you may have been directly impacted by or heard about, read about it online. In the Seal Cove area, there's a significant fault line and we see up to 1 foot of movement per year. This picture here is one of the flex systems that we install that allows for some movement before the pipes then ultimately rupture. So that's a challenge that's somewhat unique to our district, even for the Bay Area. This is an extreme ground movement. Next slide. So we mentioned that we own the water system now since well over 15 years. And this is a little bit of simplified explanation how we actually funded the improvements in the past to get to where we are right now. As mentioned, the system was in dire need for repairs and upgrades to get to the point where we're now. We're able to deliver consistently and reliably good water quality. How did we do this without further financial impact to the community? In 2001, this community authorized the issuance of $19 million in general obligation bonds. 11 million of those were used to purchase the water system. The remaining funds were used for system upgrades. And in addition to those funds, your water rates also supplemented our infrastructure needs. So that means that we were able to spend close to $1 million per year on average in capital improvements in the past. The next slide, please. So where does our water come from? Also a very unique situation. We're the only water system on the peninsula and one of the rare communities within the Greater Bay Area that rely 100% on local sustainable sources. This has been a great disadvantage in the past. We inherited a long-standing moratorium on new connections. There was simply not enough water available. Other agencies are able to purchase water from somewhere else. The large wholesale supplier system in California is really an interesting phenomenon. I'm coming from the outside, I've observed this. There's not too many places in the world where water is transported over large distances to enable communities to flourish without having direct access to water. So why did we not tie into the Hetch Hetchy system? Hetch Hetchy system is oversubscribed and does not take on new members. The reliance on the snowpack is currently and also in the future particularly questionable. All agencies in California have been asked to reactivate sources that they abandoned when they connected and find new local sources to offset the changed water supply situation that's really tied to climate change in California. So we've done our homework in the past 15 years. Our greatest disadvantage has now been turned into a big advantage. We implemented new sources, spent a lot of energy and some funds into basic research to ensure that our water supply will last this community during droughts and well into the future. We were able to switch our sources from the prior used shallow and low-lying sources to our pristine Montara mountain sources. So we have a clear understanding that we can safely and sustainably produce water for this community. The local sources are not endless and they need to be protected. They're not suited to supply other communities with greater needs. this would result in an unsustainable situation for this community. We currently serve around 1,600 customers on the water side. On the sewer side, it's close to 2,000. And the difference is because many homes depend on their own well sources. There's also something that other agencies don't have to deal with, also very unique for Montara Water and Sanitary District. And this high number of private wells in an urban setting comes with its challenges, and we're very happy that we have the capacity to serve any well owner who would like to or needs to convert to the public system. Additionally, our water system provides for domestic firefighting for the entire community. We have around 1.3 million gallons in storage to fight fires. Owning our sources allows us also, this is unlike our neighbors, to refill tanks and supply water for sanitary purposes after an emergency. So if you imagine all water being used, for example, to fight fires after an earthquake, our local sources allow us to refill our tanks and distribute potable water either through surviving pipes or fill stations. Next slide, please. Oh, we're already there, I'm sorry. Okay, so understanding our aquifer in detail is like I said, it's not a given for a water agency, but it allows us to plan long-term. We've had great success utilizing conservation. That's really due to our community. We have to thank everyone who's here tonight. Many people have a thorough understanding of our situation and put personal effort into conservation. That's really a source of water for us. In addition to that, we're of course always looking to expand our source capacity to avoid a moratorium on new connections like the one that was in place for almost 30 years with our predecessor companies. You may have heard of our interest in the Caltrans right-of-way or other properties, and I hope you understand now. We consider and plan for the long-term water supply of this community. Next slide.
Clemens, before you move on, we had a couple questions. Well depth and hydrology studies. So just on the wells, obviously the district's done quite a number of studies, right?
Yeah, we've done quite a number of studies. So I'm going to categorize this in two different types of wells. We have some shallower wells, and this is really the norm for California. Let's say in this area down to 100 feet. And this is all then in, let's call it gravel, sand. So you have pore space that fills up with water. So about 100 feet, those are a little bit more vulnerable to contamination. Then we have a very unique situation here with Montara Mountain. We already mentioned the Seal Cove Fault. On the other side, there is the San Andreas Fault. And the Santa Cruz Mountains really have been bashing their way up north since over 20 million years. And Montara Mountain is the ram head of this system and heavily fractured. So usually a solid rock, granite, isn't able to supply, there's no pore space, there's nothing that can be filled with water. In our situation, that's very different. And that's why we're looking very closely at what we're doing. We want to understand how much water there is. We did a number of hydrologic studies on this. Those sources are rather deep. We're talking about 700 feet and more. All right.
All right.
Hope I answered the question. If not, please give me a call or send me an email. All right. So
moving on.
Next slide, treatment. Yes. So we're looking now a little closer on what we need to do before we deliver the water to our house. I mentioned that we own pristine sources, extremely good water quality. I can safely say that we produce the best water on the peninsula.
Keep going.
We have a surface water treatment plant that utilizes Montara Creek water. The intake structure is directly below a series of springs on Montara Mountain. There's no development above our water source. It's literally mountain spring water. The regulators require us to filter the water and also disinfect it. We have other treatment plants that remove taste and odor, impacting compounds that, regardless of the source, we need to disinfect the water. We use chlorine to do that. There's an alternative to chlorine that would be chloramine. Chlorine is a much better disinfectant, much safer also, a bit more work intensive. Chloramine is used by larger agencies because it remains longer in the system. So if the system itself is longer and the time between production, disinfection, and consumption is greater, chloramine is the preferred choice. Generally, chlorine is preferred. So chlorine is also the reason why we recommend the use of a Brita-style filter or refrigerator filter just to remove it for better taste. There's something that I thought was also kind of interesting that we got on this slide. We're once in a while contacted by dentist organizations with a request to add fluoride to the water. And our water contains 2 milligrams per liter of naturally occurring fluoride. That's the exact recommended health goal level. So no need to add fluoride in this community. Please be aware of that. Next slide. So what do we have here? Who has an idea what that picture shows? And who knows where's up and down?
Modern art? What?
Rick almost. So it's the inside of one of our tanks. This is when we constructed our schoolhouse tank. It actually shows the roof structure. So to take that picture today, we would have to drain the tank. And yeah, so we're happy we have the picture before we filled it.
We'll put on scuba gear.
And that's actually done to clean the tanks. So once in a while, we send actually divers that are disinfected and have proper equipment in to clean our tanks. All right, so tanks, water storage. We own 7 storage tanks, have altogether over 1.3 million gallons in storage. Here's a picture of our Alta Vista tank. That's our newest tank. And it was constructed so it's half buried in the ground. That's why we had to go with concrete. But we were still able to utilize a very new technology. It's called pre-stressed concrete. A wire is wrapped under high tension around the tank to offset the pressure that's created by the volume of water in the inside. And so this technology really saved the community hundreds of thousands of dollars in construction costs. Next slide. So actually, go back. I think I forgot to talk about for here. We have our 11 pressure zones. The geography of the district is very hilly. And that's also something that maybe is comparable to situations in Marin area or so. So this is not a bowl-shaped geography that allows a simple gravity system. You all know the backside of Montara and Moss Beach is very hilly, and the complexity of our system is therefore really comparable to that of the San Francisco water system. Serving this community with water as well as sewer services is a much higher effort than most other agencies in California see. So we reduce the pressure for different pressure zones with 14 valve stations and utilize pumps to pump water between tanks. Now we can, I think, move on to the next slide. So this is another one of our tanks, and this is now schoolhouse tank on the left here. So this is the same one that we just saw from the inside, And I'm very happy to show this picture. Anyone who has seen the old schoolhouse tank that was a concrete style structure with an exoskeleton around it that was just there to hold the roof from further collapsing, and that lasted over decades. I think everyone who knows that situation appreciates our new tank as well. We actually placed a second tank along this schoolhouse tanks. We have now 2 tanks at the schoolhouse site, and that was done to increase the available fire flow and also allow one of the tanks to be taken out of service for maintenance. The picture on the right shows our new Alta Vista tank. That's an aerial view. And on the left, you see a round structure. That's the original Alta Vista tank number 1. And that now can also be serviced. So this is one of our planned future maintenance items that we will spend capital funds on in the coming years. The next slide.
Hey, Clemens, before you move on, what's the ruler thing on the side of the tank?
Well, that is actually showing the water level inside the tank. So we have telemetry systems that electronically read it, and our operators can now access via phone our, it's called a SCADA system, and really turn on wells, turn off wells, and get an overview over the entire system, how it's doing. But this one is just a manual backup. So as I mentioned, our operators go from site to site every day and read this manual level and record what this manual level actually shows. All right. So this one here is a picture of our Portola tank. And that is the highest tank in our system. It's a redwood tank, and we understand that we have to replace that at one point in the future. There's not many redwood tanks around anymore, but this one is actually really in great shape for its age. It's used for fire suppression only. That means it's full at all times. It doesn't really fluctuate a lot. And as long as redwood stays moist, it doesn't dry out. It lasts surprisingly long. So yeah, thanks for showing now the other elevations of the other tanks in the system. And here you can see really that we have to deliver water up to 560 feet high and of course down to sea level. So this may help just illustrate our geographical challenges a bit more. Next slide. Okay, so this is an aerial view of our district offices, and it's really kind of the border between Montara and Moss Beach. And so in Montara, we have the largest pressure zone, the Alta Vista zone. And in Moss Beach, we have the largest zone would be the schoolhouse zone. I mentioned we have 11 different pressure zones. So that may mean that your neighbor across the street is getting water at a different pressure than you do, just due to the high number of different pressure zones that we have to maintain because of the elevations differences. I want to just briefly dissect here to the sewer side. If you can go back to that picture one more time. If you take a close look at our district offices, Alison, maybe you can point to the round tank. That was Montara's secondary sewage treatment plant that was built in the mid-60s. It's now owned by the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside and used as a sewage retention basin, for example, to fix down, to withhold sewage, to fix pipes downstream, or if the sewer plant in Half Moon Bay is receiving too much sewage from other contributors. Next slide. So here we see, actually, this is really a water pipe with a pressure regulating station. So this is an above ground facility now. Most of our pressure regulating stations, most of our facilities are below ground. This is a great picture of an above ground facility. Pressure regulating stations reduce the pressures, so our tanks are sitting very high. The lower elevations would receive too high of a water pressure in the pipe. That's why we have to reduce the pressure so that we serve it at the correct amount to your home. Okay, so also I think it's really interesting to take a look at how this, you can see there's quite a bit of corrosion. Our coastal environment is very corrosive. Our facilities need more maintenance than any comparable inland system would require. Next slide.
More modern art.
Yeah, that's right. Another piece of modern art. And it's not your eyes. This picture is a bit blurry. This is on purpose, and we also removed important information from it. The Department of Homeland Security wouldn't be happy if we shared this information fully with you. It's a portion of our water system map, and we thought it would be interesting for you to see how convoluted our pipe system really is. Here, the various colors are showing the different pressure zones that are separated by pressure regulating stations like the one we just looked at. Thanks, Asen. Next slide. Okay, so we have about 22 miles of pipes on the water side alone that are required to get the water to your home. In the middle picture there, you see modern pipe material that's used in the district. We mainly use 6-inch water pipes. We also install 8 and 10-inch pipes. And the size of the pipe is always determined by the fire flow needs. Domestic needs are comparably small. So we always look at trying to get the best amount of water to through the hydrants. Next slide. So this is some more field work. We're showing here the black and white pictures are from mainline replacement projects. On the upper right, you see that we use a high number of valves all throughout the streets, and they're easily recognizable through the round valve can lids that you can see. The valves are used to shut down sections of mains in case of a rupture. Like here on 2nd Street, we had a main leak. The picture on the bottom illustrate once more how challenging it is to work with the severe ground movement and the offsets in the Seal Cove area. And maybe here also a shout out to the local construction firms that we're working with on a daily basis that help us fix pipes and provide the equipment. Next slide. So now that we brought the water to your home and you've used it in your toilets, showers, sinks, and so on, it enters the sewer collection system. And here at this point, I want to say that in the Montara Water Sanitary District, we see a complete water cycle. So imagine the ocean water evaporates, comes to us as clouds, it rains down on Montara Mountain, gets naturally filtered for our use as drinking water. And after we use it, the water needs to be treated and cleaned to the highest standards before being released into the ocean again. And then it can evaporate again and cycle continues. Next slide. So on the wastewater system, we have the same elevation differences and challenges that we went through on the water side. We own 24 miles of gravity flow pipes, 3 miles of pressurized sewers. That's somewhat unusual. There are some areas in the Bay Area, like I mentioned, probably Marin County, that sees a similar situation. We have 13 major pump stations and 21 smaller pumps on the sewer side. If you now know that one pump station replacement can cost up to $2 million, you get a picture of our need for ongoing maintenance and the focus on keeping things in shape and the cost low. Our neighboring sewer agency, the City of Half Moon Bay, for example, has one pump station. That's due to their favorable geography. They're replacing it right now. There are some other costs associated with it. The price tag is more in the $4 million range there. Next slide.
So we keep you busy, Clemens, with our gravity here.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so this is now a map of our northern sewer collection system, a schematic map that illustrates the different drainage basins. So similar like to the water side with pressure zones, here we have drainage basins. So let's say you live around the Date Hart pump station on Irving Street, for example. Your sewage will flow by gravity into the Date Hart pump station, pumped into the Canoff station on Montara Beach. The Canoff pump station also collects sewage from the rest of Montara. That's either via gravity pipes or with the help of other pump stations, like the 5th Street pump station. And from the Canoff pump station, it's pumped south to SAM's, the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside's Montara pump station that's located on our district office property. Also, I think it's interesting to note that, again, most everything is below ground. You see here electrical cabinets that are visible above ground. The actual pump stations are deep in the ground. Next slide. So this is the southern portion of the sewer collection system, also schematic, that's Moss Beach. Sewage is collected and pumped through various stations to the Weimar pump station that injects the sewage into the SAM inner pipeline system. So if you look at the green arrows, everything in green shows the SAM-owned pipeline starting in the north with the Montara pump station that's sending the sewage further south. And the illustration on the right here shows that the system picks up Granada sewage and the sewage from the northern portions of Half Moon Bay and then delivers it to the SAM plant. I mentioned before that Montara had its own sewage treatment plant that was completed in the 60s. Granada and Half Moon Bay did not have new secondary plants. Both had failing substandard plants and were asked by the regulators to build a centralized plant. After that decision was made, Montara was forced in the early 70s, just after the completing our own treatment plant, to participate and subsequently abandon a brand new sewer treatment plant that the community even hadn't paid for yet. So this community paid twice for a sewer treatment plant. The location of the new centralized plant was discussed for quite some time. It was decided to place the plant on a property that the city of Half Moon Bay owns. Next slide.
Hey, and Clemens, it's convenient. These pump stations are all located right along the beach and the bluff side, right? Fighting against gravity, keeping it off the beach.
That's right. Of course, sewage flows downhill, and the further you go downhill, the closer you get to the ocean. That's right. Okay, so yeah, here we see a recent pipe replacement project, sewer pipe. That's close to the district offices. It was about a year ago. You may have seen we had some visual protection up and other things. So you may have seen that there was work going on, and this is now the look over the fence. This is a replacement of a sewer pipe that's crossing Highway 1 and it needed to be replaced. And so this was done by horizontal drilling to avoid traffic impact. And if you take a look at that picture in the center, that one. So the ladder gives you an impression on how deep that excavation really was. So the construction crew had to excavate down 33 feet to install that manhole for the sewer trunk line. Next slide. Okay, so whenever we can, when we replace pipes, we utilize pipe bursting. That means essentially that we're threading new pipe through old pipe. And that allows us to minimize the impact to your front yards as much as possible. If you take a look at that second picture from the left, maybe you can see that there's actually a person behind the bush. So we often remove plants carefully and replant them when possible. One of the bigger problems with all sewer system is that rainwater finds its way into pipes. So that's called inflow and infiltration. So during the rain events, water enters the sewer system, and that is now also pumped and treated like the sewer that leaves your homes. And to avoid inflow and infiltration, we replace damaged pipes. So the district owns and maintains all main lines, but property owners own laterals that bring the sewage from the house to our mains. So in essence, the district only owns and controls around 50% of pipes associated with the sewer system and associated with the inflow and infiltration. And to further tighten the system, the board recently decided that with any mainline replacement project, the affected private pipe would also be replaced at no cost to the homeowner. And here we see this on the right, the schematic really how a lateral looks like. So there is an upper lateral, there's a lower lateral. The homeowner owns the entire lateral. In the past, we replaced the lower lateral with mainline replacement projects. Now we go as far as we can to the house and replace the entire lateral at no cost. That's just for mainline replacement projects that are done through the district. On the left, the top picture that shows a sewer pipe, how we like to look at, how we'd like it to look from the inside. Below that, you can see an offset that would allow water to seep into the system. So this is an example of a pipe that we would need to repair or replace. Roots follow the water and like to enter the sewer pipes through cracks and joints and can completely clog pipes. So this is why we clean sewer pipes on a regular basis and remove roots and other debris. Yes, talking about other debris, please do not flush wipes, even if they are labeled flushable. This type of wipes really does not break down, clogs pipes, and also can create severe damage to our sewer pumps. We recently had several pumps that were destroyed through such wipes, and the cost to the community was several tens of thousands of dollars. Next slide. So here we show how our sewage is treated at the sand plant. I mentioned that this is a secondary treatment plant. That means I try to just think of it as simple as possible. There's three main processes in place. First, a physical separation of solids from the liquid throughout various stages. And second process is biological treatment, which means that bugs eat and digest all the contaminants that we send to the plant. We need to feed the bugs, provide oxygen, ensure that we provide an environment at which they can thrive. I like to think of the plant as one organism, or maybe even as a pet, if you so want. And we have to keep this animal happy. One of our challenges, for example, are the varying flows in the plant. On a dry summer day, we may see between 1 and 2 million gallons of flow through the plant. And if it rains, the plant may be able to handle higher flows for a short period of times, up to 15 MGD, million gallons per day. But that is really not sustainable for longer periods, simply because we overwhelm the plant. And I think of it as it gets an upset stomach. The third process really is that we disinfect the water before we return it to the ocean. Anyone that's interested in learning about the treatment plant process is encouraged to go to the samcleanswater.org website. There is great information about the sewer plant available. SAM also has been giving regular plant tours before COVID, and they're looking into providing more tours in the near future. Okay, so let's talk about, I guess, is it the topic of the day or the year or the decade or the future? Emergencies. All of our water and sewer sites rely on power. All essential sites have backup power systems. We can operate the water as well as the sewer system for as long as need be on backup power. This is an integral part of what we're doing. We're always preparing for events like today's power outage. Part of our operations team's training and regular workday is also to ensure that the generators and other systems are ready at any given time. Next slide. So what's ahead? What's ahead is really the same as what we did in the past 15 years on the water side and many more years on the sewer side. We want to provide the services really for eternity. We've invested a lot of sweat and money to get to where we are today. We have a very valuable, reliable, self-sufficient local system, and we have to continue to maintain and keep up this system. We, of course, have to work within our means and ensure that we conserve our resources. Conserving our resources, if that is, your money that we're using wisely, or if that means that we're maintaining the water supply for our children, I see that all as the same. And of course, as always, we need to protect our precious watersheds and ultimately our water sources, our beaches, and our local creeks. And I think that's the last slide, Allison. So with that, I wanted to thank for everybody who's still there and hopefully you were able to pick up some things. I'm looking forward to addressing questions. We have our water and sewer engineers available. I hope Pippin is still there. I know he had to, he has a potential other board meeting that he has to attend, but we're able to address questions right now. And Allison, I think you probably got a number of them.
I do have a few. Yeah, so a couple that have come up is how do you manage the water quality or monitor for the water quality when you have both water that you're drawing from a creek and wells as well as sewer systems that are clearly nearby and in the area?
So, I mean, we monitor the water quality both at the source as well as at the customer's point of entry, essentially, if you so want. So we're looking at what is the water that we're producing, that's done for certain parameters, and for all parameters. And we also look at the water quality at homes. So I hope that addresses the question.
So keeping those systems separated, it's one of the reasons the water system's under pressure as well.
Yes.
So that if you have a break, nothing gets sucked in, right?
Yes, so there are separation requirements, and for leak situations, that's a very important. We of course need to ensure that water stays safe. So that's why we shut off mains, disinfect, and keep the sewage far away from potable water. It's separation, yes.
Right, Pippin even added, there's a 10-foot, the state requires 10 feet of separation between the water and wastewater pipes.
Yes.
I know we also had a question about droughts and our water supply. So what plans do we have for drought? How do we adjust as a drought is oncoming? And what studies and what can you tell people about droughts and our water supply?
Yeah, okay, droughts and water supply. So when we repealed the moratorium, the reason for repealing the moratorium was that we found new sources of water that we were able to make available to this community. And the regulating agencies did something rather unprecedented. They essentially said, okay, you have a certain capacity. We're simply going to take half of your capacity, well, not really away from you, but we don't make that available to you for sale for new customers. You have to reserve this capacity for drought contingencies. So half of our capacity really is there for drought contingency. I think hopefully that answers the question. So we're considering this in our planning. We have enough water. I'm also going to point again to our basic research. It's also something that's not necessarily a given. Some years ago, the state of California actually had to come down and force water agencies to take water levels in their wells and report them to the state, meaning take a look at the supply situation and see if this is sustainable or not. This is something that we've been doing, of course, for a long time, and we're doing much, much more above that. So we invest in monitoring program. We have a number of monitoring wells throughout the district that allow us to really assess the situation of our aquifers.
I'm going to ask you one other question. I've got a number on the wastewater side, but let's ask this one other question. Is there an advantage to merging our system with other coastal water systems, or is there a disadvantage?
Well, I want to say that, I mean, this community paid for the installation of all of these facilities. So, I mean, an advantage that I've heard in the past is that we now would be able to sell water to other communities. Other communities are very interested in merging with us because of our water sources. I hope I was clear enough that our sources are capable of supplying this community. The main reason why other agencies are looking to consolidate is to get access to those water sources. That would mean that we risk the public health and safety for this community. We've done our homework. Other agencies need to do their homework as well.
All right, I know we had some questions about where do your sewer fees go? Clearly we have the Montara system. We also have the SAM system. Can you explain a little bit of the sewer fees, where they come in and where they go to?
Yeah, so there's, like you're saying, there's really two parts to it. The sewer fees are collected to pay for our share of the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside. The Sewer Authority's Mid-Coastside doesn't collect fees from you, from customers. So we have to pay for the treatment plant, for the inter-tide pipeline system. That's a major cost. That's the majority of your sewer fees is going to the Sewer Authority Mid-Coastside. And then we have to maintain and pay for our own collection system, what we talked about tonight, really. So that's really the other portion that needs to be financed, and everything that goes along with it that we just described: administration, engineering, etc.
And obviously, two really important systems. Without the SAM system, you wouldn't have the treatment. You know, challenging organizationally, but important to have. Let's see, we do also have a question about, this one's great. Where do the aerobic and anaerobic bugs come from that are at the treatment plant?
Well, I hope Pippin can help me answer this question. I would say, I mean, this is really just bacterias, and I mean, we're talking literal bugs that are naturally in our environment, and I hope Pippin can confirm this for me. So I mean, there's these organisms have various sizes, so some of them are clearly visible.
Thank you, Clemens. I hope I'm unmuted.
Yes, you are hearable.
Yeah, that's a good question, how that system works. You're correct, Clemens. All the bugs in the treatment plant are essentially naturally occurring, but the skill and the challenge of the treatment plant operators are to maintain the conditions to foster the specific bugs that are most efficient for what you're trying to do to break down the organic material. For example, you can think of it more simply like the flavor of yogurt, the type of yogurt. When you make yogurt, you have a certain temperature. When you make cheese, you maybe have a different temperature. Those are two different kinds of bugs that make those two different products. So in the treatment plant, there are bugs. There's activity that is activated by oxygen and is maintained on the high flows after the heavy solids are separated. And as the solids separate out, they're put into a separate tank. And that tank is devoid of oxygen. It's called anaerobic digestion. It's where all the black, stinky stuff really happens. And those are kept at a much higher temperature, maybe 107 degrees or 115 degrees. And it's kind of like a, you know, if you get too high, it'll kill them, it'll cook them, but they activate much better. And those break down the nitrogens and the other things. They don't use oxygen for their energy source. They use other elements that are in the wastewater. So it's a multiple different organisms required to treat the sewer.
Hey, Pippin, I've also always heard that you can kill a treatment plant if you can kill the bugs and you have to truck them back in order to restart the plant. It's not an instantaneous process.
That's correct. If you were to have something very severe happen to the treatment plant, so for example, if the power were to go out at the treatment plant in a way where their backup system couldn't maintain the smooth operation, it's possible, or if a chemical spill in the collection system, someone dumps something really toxic into the sewer system, for example, that can damage the bugs. And if you need to restart the plant quickly, you would have to literally take big, huge tanker trucks to a neighboring plant and sample or pick up sewage from those different places in the plant where the different types of bugs live and truck them in, and 5,000 gallon tankers and actually inoculate the plant. Kind of, like when you add yeast to your bread, you're inoculating the bread to get that bread going. But in the treatment plant, it's on a much bigger scale.
Great. All right, thank you. I know I have at least 3 more questions. I'm going to hold the one on the lawsuit until the end because that one, I'm sure, we'll have a few questions on that. I do have one I'm new to Moss Beach. Have you heard that the runoff from the horse farms on the hill contributes to pollution of San Vicente Creek that brings water into the ocean? Is there any connection to our water supply with that type of a runoff into San Vicente Creek?
No, there is no connection to the runoff. It is a problem. I think that's important to acknowledge and recognize. San Vicente Creek ends at the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. and that portion is somewhat polluted. We don't utilize San Vicente Creek as a water source. Coastside County Water District uses it or plans to use it, but that's probably before the horse ranches. So no direct connection to that. As I said, we're using Montara Creek, and that at a relatively high elevation. So there's really nothing above it, no development whatsoever. And even the stream itself is rather short. It's just a series of dikes where the water essentially comes directly out of the mountain, and we directly take it there. So it's very clean.
Great. I did have another question about, is there a plan to allow residents to more effectively utilize their gray water from their home and not have that water going into the sewer system?
So that is actually allowable, at least certain portions. It needs to be permitted through San Mateo County. It also needs to be permitted through us. We're not going to make a big deal about it. We've permitted some of those systems for $100, I think we took for the inspections. Ultimately, what needs to be guaranteed is it's called laundry to landscape. So that's a relatively simple system. So your washing machine can be routed to the outside. There's some landscape requirements. So it needs to be some pools of water that are controlled with bark around, trees that are watered, for example. There's some good information available through San Mateo County. And so that's a way to utilize gray water in the area.
Great. Okay, one person asked their water a few days ago, their water coming from their tap, I assume, was a bit yellow. Can you explain? I know this is related to, I think, a main break.
Yeah, that is the main break that we saw in the Seal Cove area. And so the color is iron and manganese that deposits out in the mains. We flush the systems on an annual basis. We do that during the rainy season. So right now we're in the fall, so there's a little bit of sediment in the pipes. And if there is a high flow event, like that water leak that we saw, that steers up. These are very local events, but around the leak sites, it steers up the sediment. This is not a health concern. It can have more than a yellow color. So in extreme cases, I hope we didn't see this in recent years, but in extreme cases, this can be really brown. It's not a health concern. It's iron and manganese that's already precipitated out. And it does stain clothes and fixtures. The way to resolve it is to flush the faucet for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and everything should be resolved.
Great. All right. I think the big one that we've had a question or two on is, can you explain the lawsuit that we understand is happening between Half Moon Bay, El Granada, and Montara Water and Sanitary District?
Yeah, I want to refer to tomorrow's board meeting. This is really an informationary item. We actually have an agenda item up at tomorrow's board meeting for exactly that purpose. And this meeting tonight is not agendized as a board meeting. So I'd like to ask that the person who asked the question, or anyone who's interested, actually log on to our board meeting tomorrow night at 7:30 p.m. You can find the login information on our website or ask for it by email. And we're happy to go into a bit more detail at tomorrow's board meeting.
Yeah, as you can imagine, it's a complicated item, so good to know that those details are available tomorrow night. We did have one other question. Have you considered having any future fees or bond payments, etc., assessed at rates that are independent of home assessed values, which have been distorted by Prop 13? That is, charged for the water fairly, not based on how long a home has been owned by one family, as the original bond was financed.
We're not considering further GO bonds at this time. So the answer is no, because we're not looking at GO bonds. I can report that we're in the process of refinancing the existing GO bonds. This comes probably as a surprise to even our board members. So we were able to lock in an interest rate today of 1.14% for this GO bond refi. So these are savings that are directly going to every homeowner in the district. It means that in the future, the payments for the GO bonds, there's 8 years remaining on the GO bond, will be substantially lower than in the past.
Great. All right. I think that's the last question I had. I did have one comment, and I realize this is a former board member, Crystal Log. I understand he passed away. And so there was just an ask that we mention that as a former board member. I'm sorry to hear that that occurred. I know he'd had health issues. So I think that's it. I'm going to move myself down to this last slide. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other chats and no hands raised. So I think we've covered everything. If you have any other questions, you'll see on your screen, you can email. That email goes directly to Clemens. The website there, mwsd.montara.org. I typed that wrong a minute ago. So yeah, tomorrow night for more information on that existing lawsuit. And I think that is it. I don't see anybody else asking questions. Clemens, I want to say thank you so much. You did a great job with a lot of information. We had a good number of people. So I hope this was interesting. Feel free to send us an email. Let us know if there's something else we should have covered, but we'll definitely put this recording up. So, all right, anybody?
And I'd like to thank everyone for staying to the end. And hopefully we see you more often at our board meetings every first and third Thursday in the month. Right. Thank you.
Or stop Clemens on the street and thank him. Any of the staff, actually. I think they'd love to hear from anyone that they heard about the system, because it's always a challenge to continuously maintain something that's operating every minute of the day. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. It's been lovely. Have a good evening, and I hope everyone keeps their power. So far, not a lot of people dropped off, so that's good. All right.